Tyler Shough has nerves of steel and ice in his veins, and that's how the New Orleans Saints know they have their quarterback of the future.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the Saints signed several players to reserve future contracts, what that means, and who they are moving forward that we can expect to see back in training camp for New Orleans as they kick off things in 2026. The Saints defense made some major leaps from 2024 to 2025, and it's all because of defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. And the New Orleans Saints know they have their quarterback of the future because of just how clutch Tyler Shough proved to be in 2025. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us, this time making a short first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. The New Orleans Saints know they have their quarterback of the future, though you won't probably catch them saying that out loud very much as to not put too much pressure on the young quarterback. But Tyler Shough, who's going to stick around here in New Orleans over the course of the offseason, take in a little bit of Mardi Gras, welcome in a child as well with his lovely partner. So they're going to expand their family. He's going to have a very eventful offseason, but a big part of his offseason is also going to be focused on making sure that he gets back to the field in 2026, ready to build on the momentum that they built together, Tyler Shough and this New Orleans Saints team in 2025. And one of the ways that they built that momentum is because of Tyler Shough's ability to perform in clutch situations. Third down and fourth quarter in particular all stand out to me. Tyler Shough, amongst all qualifying quarterbacks, those that threw the ball at least 80 times on third down in 2025, 2026, Tyler Shough was #1 in passer rating, 103.3 in that metric, and he was #2 in completion percentage as well. So he shows you his efficiency when it matters most in terms of extending drives, passing for first downs, keeping the ball moving, helping to refresh and keep the offense on the field, and his reliability in those situations. And not only was he very good in those third and short situations, but Tyler Shough made third and longs feel achievable. He made those moments to where it was 3rd and 7 or longer feel like, hey, they can pick this up. Whereas a lot of times, I know a lot of Saints fans that I talk to, whether via text message, group chats, Discord, or of course just in the community walking around the street, a lot of guys I ask about this, and they kind of tell me that, like, yeah, they used to be that when the Saints got the third down, they would just kind of move on, go and bathroom break, change the channel, see what else is going on, grab some more food, whatever it might be, because third down felt like fourth down for a little while here in New Orleans. That was not the case under Tyler Shough, where the team was able to convert at a higher clip and stay on the field a bit longer. So his production and his efficiency in particular on third down, definitely something that stood out here during his starts throughout the regular season. And it's not just third down, it was the fourth quarter as well. When you really needed it, Tyler Shough tended to show up. Now, of course, we saw a little bit of a blemish in that with the interception by D. Alford that was brought back for 59 yards in this past game in Week 18 up against the Atlanta Falcons. But as many have told us, more of a great play by the defender than a bad throw or bad decision by Tyler Shough. Basically, everyone that we've talked to about that throw said, yeah, you make that throw 10 times out of 10 because you saw the inside slot corner shade inside and then bounce back outside after the ball was already in the air. Not a lot that you can do about that. It's not on a quick release string that you can just pull the ball back to your hand, right? Unfortunately, once you let that thing go, it is what it is. But I'll be curious to see how it is that Tyler Shough learns from a moment like that, because he's not the type of dude that's just going to brush it off. And he might give credit to D. Alford, but still looking at ways to continue to improve that. So outside of that blemish, Tyler Shough was excellent in his starts when it came to fourth quarter play. And that's seen in comparison to the rest of the NFL as well. Amongst the starting quarterbacks, so this is only counting Tyler Shough's games in which he was the starter, not the games against like Seattle when he came in late or Tampa when he came in the second half. But from that Los Angeles Rams, my apologies, game all the way through the end of the season against the Atlanta Falcons, through those starts, Tyler Shough was one of the best fourth quarter quarterbacks in the NFL. Number one in passing yards per attempt. Number one as well in passing first downs accrued per game as well. So again, much like we talked about with third downs, keeping drives alive, keeping the ball moving, keeping the offense on the field. He also had a top 10 completion percentage and a 99.8, 99.2 passer rating, which was 11th. So just outside of top 10. And by the way, that's out of 40 plus quarterbacks that started at least 6 games this season. So really, really good production, really good numbers, and really good accolades for Tyler Shough, who absolutely earned it in the clutch on third and fourth down. Much like how he helped to make third downs feel like they were achievable, he also helped to make deficits feel like they were achievable. You go back to it was a loss, but even still, you look at the Miami Dolphins game where they almost came back in that one, recovered the onside kick, everything. In terms of that, you look at the Tampa game and their ability to be able to close that one up. That was his first sort of game-winning drive or fourth quarter comeback drive. Then you look back at this season against Tennessee as well, and his ability to throw the team back into it, not just use his legs. Then you saw both sides of it up against the Atlanta Falcons, where he made some of the most aesthetically pleasing throws and plays we've seen by a quarterback in some time here in New Orleans, but also ran it in, beat Jalen Walker around the edge to get the touchdown at one point against Atlanta on a play that wasn't even a design run. That was a design pass, but it was covered well, tucked it, ran it, got around the corner and kind of hop-stepped his way into the end zone there. A little swag going into the end zone. You'll love to see that level of, competitive nature in these quarterbacks as well. But then the throw to Ronnie Bell, which Ronnie Bell made a phenomenal catch with one hand up against the Atlanta Falcons. That throw was while being hit as well. One play that won't count, him navigating the pocket in the red zone and hitting Kevin Austin Jr. for a touchdown. That was unfortunately called back due to offensive pass interference, which I think was incidental contact, but maybe it's just the bias in me. That's okay. I cover the team. I get it. I understand, whatever. But I think there was a lot of good things that you saw from Tyler Shough in the biggest moments. And now with an off season to actually rest up and then prepare and be able to kind of have a second season with Kellen Moore, a second season in this offense, and the potential to add weapons on this offense as well. That foundation that's already been laid, third down, fourth quarter, situational expertise, that's something that could carry the Saints a long way next year and if the last place schedule on the way. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints defense can also carry them very far, and we saw some humongous leaps from 2024 to 2025. We'll highlight some of those and why Brandon Staley is to thank, along with the New Orleans Saints defensive personnel. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by friends over at ZocDoc. Finding a doctor shouldn't be a hassle. It shouldn't be stressful. It's 2026. We should be able to take care of ourselves without having to worry about jumping through hoops and going through appointments and all these other things just to get to the doctor you want to go and see. That is where ZocDoc comes in. It's a free app and website that helps you find and book high quality in-network doctors so that you can choose someone to truly connect with, right? Not just the focus or the expertise of that doctor, but their ability to be able to connect with you obviously is a big part to develop some of that trust between that doctor and patient. Appointments usually happen within 24 to 72 hours, and they can even be made for same-day openings as well. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL and instantly book your doctor that you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. All right, I've been waiting for a while to tell you about this, and our friends over at Ultimate GM have a new game for you. It is called Ultimate QB Football Legend. Have you ever wanted to be the franchise-saving quarterback drafted #1 overall to the New Orleans Saints? Well, now you can be, thanks to our friends over at Ultimate QB, where you are the quarterback. Yeah, it's got all the same really cool stuff that Ultimate GM had in terms of being able to train, do some of the things off the field, like sign contracts, upgrade yourself. You can even be a little bit of a diva, say, I want this player, build this team around me, but includes gameplay as that quarterback as well. Ultimate GM is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline as well. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search Ultimate QB in your app store. And don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps over in the game store so you can get a free boost to start your career. It's Ultimate QB, football legend, QB1. It's your legacy. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints defense was its most improved unit in 2025, and honestly, it's not even close. The 2025 New Orleans Saints absolutely turned on a dime, all thanks to defensive coordinator Brandon Staley and a really, really good, talented host of players that maybe weren't necessarily a fit for the system, was a big concern for a lot of folks early on in the year, but went on to prove that they could absolutely be players that have an impact, whether they're 4-3 or 3-4 guys, tackling, forcing turnovers, and getting many players to the football are all the same principles, no matter how many players you line up on the defensive line and at the second level at linebacker, and we certainly saw that play its way out this year. Let me give you a couple of examples. The New Orleans Saints were top 10 in several major categories, including total yards per game, where they were 9th, total yards per play, where they were 6th, passing yards per game, where they were top 5, number 4 overall for that one. How about sacks per pass attempt? Number 5 in that one as well. They were a great third down defense. They were top 3 in third down sacks with 26, and they were a fantastic red zone defense as well. Top 10 in the league there at number 10. The reason why I highlight some of these, though, is because you can actually track the progression from 2024 to 2025. So you mentioned total yards per game, where the Saints were 9th in that metric this year. Last year, as a total defense, they ranked 19th. They ranked 30th in total yards. They were 19th in points allowed last year. They were much better in that category this season, or they were slightly better in that category this season as well, finishing up the year 16th there. But the leap from 30th to 9th in terms of total yards allowed was massive. And what that tells you is that a lot of those scoring drives are probably on situations early on in the season, and even some that we saw later in the season. You think about the blocked punt that Atlanta got on New Orleans, short field situations for the defense and quick turnarounds as well, because the New Orleans Saints still finished historically bad on the offensive side when it came to first quarters, where their first quarter point margin was minus 93. That's the worst that we've seen, according to our friends over at True Media, since they started tracking that back in the year 2000. The next worst was minus 92 by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2011. So not great there. So you look at some of those early slow starts, you look at some of those short yardage situations, and you can see where the points and the yardage don't necessarily match up, but you can see why that ends up being the case. Here's my favorite one of these, though. Okay. We always talk about run game, run game, run game. Remember, the Saints last year, one of the worst run defenses. The Saints finished this season when it came to total rushing yards allowed right in the middle of the pack around the NFL. So they improved there massively, because last year they were 31st in the NFL in total rushing yards allowed. But here's the big thing that I'm looking at: yards per attempt. There's two reasons why I'm looking at this. First of which is because the Saints at the end of 2024 were 31st in the NFL, second worst in the league when it came to yards per attempt, where they were allowing 4.9 yards per rushing attempt. Very bad run defense last year. This year, in 2025, believe it or not, the Saints allowed 3.97 yards per carry throughout the year, 6th in the NFL. 6th, top 10, when it came to their rushing defense on a per carry basis. Now, total rushing yards allowed, they were middle of the pack, but yards per carry, they were absolutely outstanding in that one. And what goes to that point is that they also faced the third most rushing attempts in the NFL. So this wasn't just them getting lucky on a couple of plays here and there, particularly towards the back half of the season. They got much better against the run as well. They held Bijan Robinson to his lowest lowest scrimmage yards total on the season. I think it was just 43 yards, only the second time this year that he was held to under 50 yards. The first time was 48 yards in that situation. But then when you look at the defense in terms of rushing defense, 49 yards last week, 108 yards the weekend before that up against the Tennessee Titans, and then just 64 rushing yards allowed against the New York Jets. They finished very strong in that category after allowing 121 to the Falcons in week 12, 164, 179, and 127. They finally got that under control towards the end of the season. And so I think the Saints were able to benefit off of that quite a bit. So for New Orleans, some big time steps forward over on the defensive side. There's no doubt in my mind that the Saints defense is the most improved unit in 2025/2026, right? One game in 2026 here. And so I'm really excited to see how the Saints progress that moving forward. Remember, over the course of the last couple of games, he also didn't have Bryan Bresee, who coming into the NFL, out of the NFL draft as a first round pick a couple of years ago, was not a premier run stopper. He was an interior pass rusher, but he made some major strides as a run defender here in 2025. And so that made a big difference for them. He wasn't on the field towards the end of the season. Nathan Shepard not on the field in the last game where they held Bijan Robinson to under 50 total yards of offense, right? And then you have guys like on the interior that are, John Ridgeway and Jonathan Bullard, these guys that they picked up, or brought back on one-year deals and everything and found ways to contribute to make this team better over on that side. Now you have an offseason to actually add to that position group as well. I think the defensive interior is a place that makes sense to continue to feed into and then continue to add talent there and see how much better you can get as a run defense. Because then if you can start to take away the run game, while you're also top 10 in the NFL in sacks per passing attempt, one of those things leads to another, especially as you're continuing to build up the offense as well. So the ripple effects and the domino effect, rather, that ends up happening here is worth it, right? You scoring points on the offensive side. Once you get to the point where you're more consistently scoring points on the offensive side, especially if you can fix the slow starts, which you have to get better at in 2026. We highlighted that in yesterday's episode as well. But if you get that going and then you start to put points on the board early, you start to eliminate teams' rushing attacks. But then if you're also a tough team to rush against, then you end up in a situation there to where you're keeping those rushing yards down because of what you're also doing on the defensive side. And then as teams resort to having to throw because you're creating gaps in the scoreboard and you're eliminating the run game, you have a top 5 pass rushing defense that's converting sacks on 9.16% of teams' passing attempts. You're feeding one into the other in that case. And so watching what the Saints do over the course of the offseason, the defensive line is going to be particularly interesting going into this year. But shout out to Brandon Staley and this New Orleans Saints personnel that has a lot of holdover from 2024 into 2025 that prove that they can play in a new system and cross 40 sacks for the first time and achieve all of these top 10 rankings. Kudos and applause for Brandon Staley and the New Orleans Saints defense. Up next, the New Orleans Saints are going to be bringing back some familiar faces from their practice squad. We'll highlight some of the reserve future contracts that were handed out on Monday. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where things just keep getting better. How about a Friday NBA happy hour? NBA happy hour is your official pregame before the games tip off between 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. A real chance within that limited time window where special offers drop right before FanDuel, right before on FanDuel before the games actually tip off and get started. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. Become appointment viewing for NBA fans over at FanDuel.com. It's easy to check out all of the great weekly specials before tip-off so that you can make your move before the window closes. So before tip-off this weekend, make sure you go and check out FanDuel and see what's dropping over at NBA Happy Hour every Friday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints brought back 8 players on future reserve deals. We'll highlight what that means, who those players are, and some futures that we're still wondering about for this team here as we wrap up the show. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time. Being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer on the show means the world to us as we continue on 5 days a week here all throughout the offseason. And I'll tell you right now, 5 days a week plus as we move forward. So look, the Saints brought 8 players and signed them to reserve future deals. What's a reserve future deal? These are the deals that are handed out at the end of the season to players that are not on the 53-man roster to effectively give them a bit of a claim to rights for that player for next season. So because those players have accepted this contract, they don't technically become free agents. They can't just go out and negotiate, sign anywhere, all those things. It basically just gives these players a non-guaranteed 1-year deal agreement that gives the Saints, reserves the Saints their rights and gives them an opportunity to vie for a spot on the 53-man roster come training camp, right? Now they'll have to stay on the roster long enough, all those other things. These players are not promised a 53-man roster spot or a practice squad spot going into next year, but they kind of get their first dibs at it, especially with the new coaching staff. These are players that are going to be coming back looking for an opportunity with the same coaching staff as they move forward. So I'll quickly run through the players that the Saints brought back, and we'll highlight a couple of them. I want to start off with the defensive backs because the Saints are bringing back 4 defensive backs on this list. Undrafted free agent cornerback Dallas Beanie, cornerback that came over in his second year from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Beanie Bishop. We'll come back to him in a second. Undrafted free agent out of University of Texas, San Antonio, now going into his second year, Alontae Davis, the safety. And then, of course, USFL returner, and I think he was the leader in passes defended, if I remember correctly, during that time, Jayden Price, who stayed on the practice squad all season long with New Orleans, along with Dallas Beanie and Alontae Davis. All 3 of those guys were on the training camp roster and then spent time with the season on the practice squad all throughout the year without seeing much action, if any, at all. Now, Beanie Bishop, though, is the one that I'm going to highlight here, along with Jayden Price, as the players to know of this group. Beanie Bishop was an effective slot cornerback, had 4+ interceptions, maybe it was 4 interceptions his rookie year as an undrafted free agent with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Grady Brown, who was a coach with the cornerbacks that year in 2024 with Pittsburgh, is now the cornerbacks coach here in New Orleans. Once Beanie Bishop became available and there was an opportunity to bring him here to New Orleans, Grady Brown and the Saints helped to make that happen. So definitely a player to watch, especially with so much uncertainty hanging around the future of Alontae Taylor, who I think is going to have a big-time market this offseason. He said today that he loves the city of New Orleans and that if he does end up having to leave, that it's going to be very hard for him. But I do think that there are going to be teams out there that are going to be willing to pay him good money to be an outside corner as opposed to the money that he would be paid here in New Orleans to be a slot corner. Very similar situation, but without the attitude and animosity with C.J. Gardner-Johnson years ago. And so I think that when you have a chance here that Alontae Taylor gets a really good deal somewhere that he absolutely deserves to be an outside corner, that a guy like Beanie Bishop could be in the conversation to be competing as a starting slot corner for New Orleans. The Saints, of course, can handle that in a bunch of different ways. They could draft an outside corner and then move Quincy Riley inside. He's already said that he loves playing in the slot. All those other things. So lots of different ways for the Saints to go, but I think Beanie Bishop would immediately become a part of that conversation. Meanwhile, Jayden Price was one of the best return men in the spring leagues. So if the Saints don't have a top returner going into 2026, especially with Rashid Shaheed unlikely to, return to New Orleans or anything like that, Jayden Price could be a guy that earns a unique role as a potential returner over the course of the offseason. Wrapping up the defense, the Saints also brought back defensive lineman Keziah Izzard. Now, the Saints on the offensive side brought back wide receiver, or will be bringing back wide receiver Elijah Cooks, who was a late addition in the draft, or excuse me, in free agency this year after Devon Vele went down. Elijah Cooks, who we didn't get to see in action here in 2025, not super surprising considering how late he joined the roster. 6'4", 215 plus pounds, good big body type wide receiver. And so definitely one to watch going into the offseason. Saints also brought back will be bringing back two offensive linemen, Easton Kilty out of Kansas State, previously before that of North Dakota State University, otherwise known as Offensive Line University, and then tackle Barry Wesley, who was another USFL addition along with Jayden Price. Barry Wesley started the season on injured reserve, was brought back to the active roster, then moved down to the practice squad after he was eligible to return, and had spent his time on the practice squad. So those players will be back in 2026, but some, at least for training camp. And some players, though, veterans and otherwise, there's still some big question marks lingering. What happens with Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Taysom Hill, Alontae Taylor, Foster Morrow? There are some of these players that are going to end up potentially going elsewhere, or at least getting offers elsewhere, or potentially even calling it quits as a whole after this season. We know Cam Jordan wants to be back. We know Demario Davis wants to be back. We know that Chris Olave wants an extension. We know Alontae Taylor would like to be here, but obviously is going to get some opportunities elsewhere. And we know for sure that some of those players, and then you loop in Foster Morrow as well, some of those players will not be back in 2026. So that will be a big time storyline that we follow. I think Demario Davis and Cam Jordan should and could be back. I think extending Chris Olave is a wise thing to do, but with the rest of the guys, we don't know just yet. So it'll be very interesting to watch the future of those veteran players along with these young players going into 2026. All right, a little bit of lanyard for the real ones that made it to this point in the show. Something very interesting that I really liked from Chris Olave when we spoke to him on Monday. First of all, he described a little bit about how the blood clot thing came to being noticed. He mentioned that after the game on Sunday and then Monday, kind of felt like he had a bruised rib, but then things didn't really ever get better. Ended up talking to the training staff, going to the hospital, getting scans, working with Dr. Amos and the medical team with New Orleans, and they found that blood clot in his lung. So the symptom was that it kind of presented as soreness and or like a bruised rib, but then kind of worsened over the course of the couple days. They found it, were able to get it taken care of. Very clear from the very beginning, as Chris Olave was describing it, that two things. One, they're not super sure how it happened or how it was caused. That's something that they are working on getting the information around. But outside of that, no long-term impact is expected. He should be all good moving forward. But when he was speaking with us, the other thing that he highlighted was that he took the moment as he was praising Tyler Shough in his rookie season, why he should be Offensive Rookie of the Year, all that, took a moment to also say, hey, by the way, I also want to say something about Spencer Rattler. And then went on to praise Spencer Rattler, said that people said that it was his fault, that things weren't working earlier in the season, when really the fault was on everybody, and went so far as to also say that he believes that Spencer Rattler should get the opportunity to be a starting quarterback elsewhere if he gets a chance. And if that chance were to present itself. And we haven't really ever delved into that because we've been busy tracking the Tyler Shough of it all and the Saints season. But one of the big offseason topics is going to be, what is the future of Spencer Rattler, and is it here in New Orleans? So in tomorrow's episode, I want to make sure that we highlight that, but I wanted to bring this up today so that you can kind of ponder it overnight around the idea of where Spencer Rattler could potentially end up. Lots of teams are going to be looking for quarterbacks. The Saints obviously have theirs. Could there be a situation in which Spencer Rattler is given the chance to go and pursue a starting job somewhere else? That's something that Chris Olave said that he absolutely deserves an opportunity to have. And so obviously he's not going to get it here because the Saints have their quarterback, but will he stay here to be a backup and maybe pursue other opportunities later? Or will he want to pursue opportunities right away? And how do you go about handling that if you're the New Orleans Saints? So very much looking forward to highlighting that in the coming days. But I thought it was a really, really good example of Chris Olave's growth as a leader, making sure, hey, real quick, I want to say something about the guy that made it all happen at the beginning of the season, and made sure that he highlighted, hey, Spencer Rattler did a really good job in the situation that he was in, and he deserves more opportunities. So we'll continue that conversation, the future of Spencer Rattler, and continue as well wrapping up the 2025-26 New Orleans Saints season and looking ahead to the offseason. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi, and if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, N-O-L-A. Hit me up. Know what our family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust that nation. I'll holla at you.